Hello, welcome to the South Fork Kings Groundwater Sustainability Landowner Webinar. My name is Crystal Tufangshin, and I and Eric Ostring will be your presenters today. We all work for Kings River Conservation District, and we're helping to staff the South Fork Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So we're going to go first of all through some slides to just cover just the context of why we're doing this assessment. And so I want to kind of go over, what is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act? Who is the South Fork Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency? Why is this important, this assessment? And how you can participate in the election. And I'm going to go briefly over mine because we know the main purpose of you being here is to discuss the new groundwater assessment. And let me just first start out by saying the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act has 4 components. The main components are that they're going to form groundwater sustainability agencies, and that was done by June 30th of 2017. Over 268 were formed in the state, and we're one of those 268, the South Fork Kings. And then secondly, you need to develop plans, and those are due by 2020, January 31st of 2020. And then after that, you have 20 years to implement the plan, and then by 2040 be sustainable. So the groundwater sustainability agencies were given a number of authorities by the law, the new groundwater law. And these are to help them to achieve sustainability according to the requirements of the law. So one of those is, as you can probably see up in the top left, administrative fees and assessments. So that's what this South Fork Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency is working on at this time. So as I said, we did complete forming the agencies. It was a big accomplishment. A lot of cities, counties, irrigation districts came together to develop these agencies with a deadline of the 2017, June 30th. Each of these agencies now are working on developing plans, these groundwater sustainability plans that are required by the law. So what is in a groundwater sustainability plan? Well, there are some specific items that have to be included. One is the physical description of the groundwater management area, and that's including the groundwater conditions. You want to describe what's going on in the basin underneath you. Another is a water budget, and that's basically what is going in to the basin flows. Could be irrigation water, surface water, and what is going out. I mean, pumping or movement in and out of that. So that has to be developed. They're going to have to do monitoring program and projects that have to be identified. Talk about how they're going to be sustainable in 20 years, and a lot of that's going to come out of their measurable objectives and thresholds. They're going to be required to do an annual report, and then the state's going to check in every 5 years to make sure that we're on progress toward our targets. Now, one thing about the Groundwater Sustainability Plan is that it is one of the reasons why we're having this assessment. It is costly. There's going to have to be a lot of technical reports and studies. They estimate approximately can be up to $1 million. So that's one of the proposals that we have in front of you. The good news for the South Fork Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency and all the other agencies within the Tulare Lake Subbasin, which I'm going to show you who that is in a minute, those agencies applied for a grant and did receive $1.5 million, which will take and reduce the cost of developing that plan. And that's one of the things you're going to hear about. The South Fork Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency is always going to be looking toward other funding sources to help supplement anything that is required within their budget. So what's up on the slide right now is the sustainability criteria. I wanted to go over that briefly. And that is what is the law that describes of how you're going to be sustainable. I mean, what is it that's going to be the roadmap to sustainability? The South Fork Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency will have to look at the issues and solutions specific to their area with each of these items being considered, except for, of course, seawater intrusion. And that has to do more with the subbasins along the coast. So they'll say, so what is it, how bad is our lowering of groundwater levels, and what is it that we feel would be make us sustainable going forward? I mentioned the Tulare Lake Subbasin. This is a visual of that. All the colors that aren't that light brown are groundwater sustainability agencies, 6 of them in total that are within that Tulare Lake Subbasin. And I think the main thing to point out here, I mean, we're one of the 6, but the state law only looks at a subbasin, for example, the Tulare Lake Subbasin as a whole when it talks about sustainability. So while South Fort Kings is going to be looking at its specific issues, we're going to have to coordinate with all of the other 5 within that Tulare Lake Subbasin. The good news for the Tulare Lake Subbasin is that all of these 6 GSAs are actually trying to work on doing one groundwater sustainability plan, and that is much more efficient and cost savings to the landowners. So that's what their first goal is, as opposed to you could actually do 6 groundwater sustainability plans, which some subbasins are taking that route, and they're going to have to coordinate through coordination agreements. We still have to coordinate, but coordinating under one plan is much better. So this is just a map to show you that if you are within that green area, you've received this notice for this assessment, and so you fall within the South Fort Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Now, just to give you an idea of how this all came about. When the law was passed in 2014, the first thing, as I mentioned, they had to form these agencies. So a lot of different entities came together. According to the law, a groundwater sustainability agency can only be made up of public agencies that have powers over water and land use authority. So that would include your counties, your irrigation districts, your cities, your public utility districts. So all these different agencies throughout the valley were trying to find like interests to form under. And so the 5 that have formed under the South Fort Kings came together for their specific area. And one interesting aspect of that is you have some irrigation district, a city, a public utility district, and you have the county, because the county is representing all those lands that do not have authority over them. So that's why it's important that the county is involved in all of these GSAs, because if we don't cover all the lands, again, the state will call that an unmanaged area, and then they'll come in and work with that on intervention, which Eric is going to cover what that means a little later in the presentation. So I just want to say that our South Fort Kings Groundwater Sustainability Board, which you just saw the members of in the previous slide, they're committed to transparency in public decision process and to stakeholder participation. So we just would invite you to get involved, whether it's coming to our bi-monthly board meetings. We meet on the 3rd Thursday of every other month at 5:30 at the Lemoore City Council chambers. The dates are there up for you to see. We also have all these dates on our website. We'd like you to participate in the development of this groundwater sustainability plan. This is going to be critical for defining how we're going to move forward and what we need to do or not do to become sustainable. And so your input as a landowner is requested, and we'd like your knowledge and experience so that we can have a better outcome when we're developing our plan and the solutions for achieving sustainability. Finally, my last slide, I just want to reference our website, southfortkings.org. We have a very robust website. We keep it updated regularly. We put up all the meetings and notices and agendas, and then post our minutes. Also, if anything comes out of a board meeting, we'll do a little write-up on it. As you can see on this one, we say contract approved with Geosyntec. So as things come about, we make sure we get them posted up there. So that's a good way to stay involved. And if you can't, for some reason, come in person, you'll be able to find some information here to keep you up to date. And with that, I'm going to have Eric continue on to talk to you about the assessment.
My name is Eric Osterling, and I too am with Kings River Conservation District. And Crystal and I primarily help to administrate the South Fort Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency in Kings County. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth about the Prop 218 assessment that you will be receiving a ballot for and considering later this month. And moving slides here. Again, Crystal pointed out that this is the assessed area. There's an exception here. Actually, the city of Lemoore would be carved out of this and would pay their fair share based on their current fee structures. And so they would not be voting on this other than as the city itself rather than the individual residents. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but it's not an exemption. It's just a different way to approach it for the incorporated city of Lemoore. This is a detailed budget, and I can come back to this and go over it in a little bit more depth. But what's important here is to take a look at each of the fiscal years and understand that this is a 5-year assessment. It does sunset after 5 years. If we wish to assess if this assessment is approved by the voters past the 5 years, then we would have to come back to the voters again for authorization to do that. There's also a difference here in our projections for each of the fiscal years. We anticipate that the majority of the costs at the beginning are going to be for the plan development, and then that'll decrease over time. The forecast is based on reasonable assumptions and objectives that are mostly outlined in very concrete within the act and the regulations that the state has imposed upon this region. The amount of time that was spent on formulating this budget was about 6 months, so a lot of thought went into it, working with our consultants, discussing various needs with our adjoining GSAs and other GSAs throughout the region. And we're all facing the same issue, and that is that we have to meet these very expensive unfunded mandates of SGMA. Some of our revenue requirements, the needs would be to fund the annual management and operating costs for the agency. So that's all of those things that you would expect an agency would need to do in its daily operations, from financial and administration, just to pay the bills. We have to also, what it's proposing, this Prop 218 election, is to reimburse those member agencies for past support of operations of the agency. So this group and agency has been meeting and conducting business for several years, and those member agencies, the different irrigation districts, the city of Lemoore, community of Stratford, and the mutual water companies, the county of Kings, are seeking reimbursement to put that money back into their coffers and in effect circulate it back to those people who are paying the bills. The major lift in the initial years is to develop and then perform initial implementation of a groundwater sustainability plan. That requires a ton of technical activities, evaluations of the groundwater basin, groundwater monitoring, and coordination of those technical efforts with other GSAs. And then ultimately we would need to undertake projects for groundwater sustainability, and those projects would be described within the completed groundwater sustainability plan. So there are certain things that are required of a Proposition 218 process to comply with Article 13D, Section 4 of the California Constitution. These are those items that have been completed, and that was an evaluation of all of the parcels in the area, working closely with Kings County. We're using their parcel tax parcel data. So if you receive a bill from or a property tax bill from the County of Kings, then you should be receiving flyers from us, and then ultimately the ballot. We need to prepare an engineer's report, and what that is it's not just a bunch of drawings and design. It's really describing the overall need for this assessment, coming up with a budget and a schedule for implementing the election, and including the calculation of a proposed assessment amount. And then we have to set a public hearing, and that's been set in the action that followed the adoption of the engineer's report by the board of directors. The things that we need to work on still and complete in order to conclude this 218 election is to notice the landowners and provide the balloting. We need to conduct a public hearing, and that has to be noticed 45 days prior to that public hearing. And that noticing is concurrent with receipt of your ballot. And then other administrative requirements. This assessment is seeking voter approval not to exceed $9.80 per acre, and that's annually. While $9.80 is what you would be approving in voting for this election, it's the limit. So each year, the board of directors in that 5-year schedule, they set their annual budget and they set the annual assessment. And while assessment cannot exceed $9.80. It can be less than that. So here's just some general examples to help you better understand exactly what you can expect with the proposed assessed amount. An average size quarter-acre residential parcel at $9.80 per acre per year, which is the maximum amount, again, that we could ask, would expect to see in their county tax bill, which comes twice a year in the spring and the fall, an additional $2.45. A small farm of 40 acres, agricultural parcel, at $9.80 per acre can expect in their tax bill an increase of $392 per parcel. There are alternatives and options in just about everything in life, and this is no exception, although there aren't that many alternatives. The first option is for agencies to come together, form a groundwater sustainability agency, and that, as Crystal mentioned, has been completed, and then to try to succeed locally by funding their activities, developing a groundwater sustainability plan, and then implementing it in a fashion that would achieve sustainability objectives. But if that is to not succeed, then the state can intervene and can assume control of responsibilities over the South Fork Kings GSA area. The state will fund its operations too, but they will not do that through a Prop 218 election. There will be no election. They will just send a bill. Their fees would include regulation of the region, so their administration of that effort. They would require filing fees per well, so each well would receive a bill, and it would be based on how much they use. And in order to assess how much water each well is using, they would require that at the well owner's expense, installation of meters, and then reporting of that information. And then once that information is submitted to the state, that information would then be public. The difference with that in mind is that the GSA, where it's able to, is much like the watershed coalitions that some of the agricultural community are used to here, where we are seeking to protect privacy to the extent possible. And then the state would also fund probably a few technical reports, but nothing to the extent that the GSAs are seeking. But the GSAs are looking to make sure that the information and the data is sound, so that the implementation is equitable and reasonable for achieving sustainability. So just to give a little bit more concrete perspective on what intervention could mean, this is coming from the horse's mouth. Sam Bolin-Bryan, who's the Groundwater Management Program Chief at the State Water Resources Control Board, just last week at a workshop in Clovis, California, had this quote, and he said, "That kind of interim plan that we would develop wouldn't have much flexibility. We'd require monitoring, collect pumping data, and set a schedule for certain corrective actions, like reducing pumping. Sigma gives us that blunt instrument, reducing pumping, and we would probably use it." Also, to illustrate what you can expect in terms of cost for the state alternative, that is, if the local option here is unable to fund itself and exist, the state has developed this fee schedule of their own. And this is an infographic that illustrates that. They show that each well would have a base filing fee of $300. They would have then a volumetric rate per acre foot. In this case, this circumstance here would be probation, so it would be $40 per acre foot. And then there would be a late fee per month of 25% that would be levied on top of that. Going back to our two examples here, the quarter-acre municipal household parcel and also the 40-acre agricultural parcel, that $2.30 would go up to $60.09, and the ag parcel would go up to $7,450 for that 40-acre parcel. Next steps, we are going to continue our public outreach. We will continue to notify the public through various mailers, and then we will notice the landowners and provide the balloting at the same time. The public hearing and close of voting would occur on June 21st at 5:30 p.m. at the Lemoore City Council chambers. It's also at that meeting that the results of the election would be certified by our third-party elections consultant. And if the election passes, we will forward the assessments to the Kings County for implementation and collection via tax roll. And so the first collection, this is actually incorrect, would be in the fall of this current calendar year. And January 2019, why that was a mistake is because that would be when the GSA would receive its first check from the county. And with that, I will conclude this presentation.